I'm here with some of our fantastic pro-life leaders. I've got Camila, Ben, Ruth and Clare, and hopefully Mark will be joining us shortly as well. So let's just start by you all introducing yourselves and your organisation. So Ruth, do you want to get us started?
I'm Ruth Rawlins and I work for CBR UK, so the Centre for Bioethical Reform UK, and we're working to educate on humanity of the unborn child and the reality of abortion and support those who have been affected as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Clare?
Hi, I'm Clare McCullough from the Counsel network. We run a Catholic pro-life pregnancy centre for women of all backgrounds and women in crisis pregnancy situations across the UK. We also run vigils outside abortion centres and offer help and support to women there.
Lovely, thank you. And Ben, can you tell us a bit about Christian Concern?
Yeah, so Christian Concern, we work about on the legal side of these kinds of questions, so campaigning, defending the rights. CBR, I've been a client before, we've defended. So on those kinds of issues, and also training and equipping as well. So through our Wilberforce Academy, really trying to educate students and young professionals on these kinds of issues, including abortion.
Fantastic, thank you. And Camila, which organisation are you from?
So I work for Pregnancy Crisis Helpline. So we are an organisation like Clare's. We exist to help women in crisis pregnancy situations, or women who call us, for example, who are post-abortive and want some support.
Great, sounds like great work. It's wonderful to have you all with us. So we've got quite a lot of questions that have come in, so we'll see how many we can get through. So Ben, I'll start with you. Someone said they find it frustrating that no one in their church seems interested in pro-life issues. What should they do?
Well, I guess sometimes in those kinds of situations, we can often sometimes say, oh, the only thing we can do is pray, as though that's not the most powerful thing we can do. And so I always encourage people, the first thing you should do is pray about this. In my own local context, where some of the local churches weren't particularly passionate about the pro-life cause, I was thinking, okay, well, what can I do? And the first thing is, well, we should just pray. So I messaged the churches, I messaged it in the various networks in my own church, and just said, hi everyone, I'm going to be doing this thing once a month. We're going to meet to pray about abortion. If you want to get involved, come along. And then we had people from the different groups who you maybe just don't know are passionate about this issue, or it is on their radar. And then when you start from that, then it can build and build and build. I think it's important to know where your leaders stand. So whilst they might be saying, oh, they might not feel comfortable yet in speaking about abortion from the front of church, for example, it is important to make sure that in their own hearts they have a clarity on the issue. I think that's a very serious error if you have a pastor who is anti-life, pro-choice, abortion. That's a serious error, and so I don't think that should be tolerated. But I think working to change his heart, change his perception, realize the seriousness of the issue it takes time. And takes prayer and does take grace and patience as well. And I know it can be hugely frustrating in those kinds of situations, but as I just say, start off by praying, start small, and see that change happen over time.
Fantastic, that sounds great. And we've got some different church leaders as well with us later on today, both from the Catholic Church and the Evangelical Church. So hopefully they'll have more discussion as well, and some more tips for people. So Clare, I just want to turn to you and talk about buffer zones, which I think is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. Do you think you could just explain a little bit about what buffer zones are, if people aren't aware, and then also what the current situation is? Are we bringing in national buffer zones?
So buffer zones are something that the anti-life movement have been working on for some years now, and basically it's an idea that they can make a bubble outside the clinic, an area outside abortion centres where people cannot protest or, as we do, just offer help and pray. So the idea is to present us as people who harass and protest when actually we are there to pray and offer support so that they can get us banned. And this has happened in Ealing. So in Ealing, where the abortion centre is, Mary Stopes Abortion Centre, we have a vigil which has now been moved 150 metres down the road, and we also have a very limited space where we are allowed to offer help and support and to pray for the women and the staff and everybody involved. But in Twickenham, for instance, outside the BPAS abortion centre, we've been moved completely away. It's probably a 10-minute walk to the nearest place where we would be allowed to offer a leaflet offering alternatives or help to women. There's also a buffer zone in Manchester, and there are proposals for buffer zones across the country. MPs like Rupert Huck have been trying to bring in a national buffer zone for some years now and have failed so far, but it's constantly on the agenda. So we know the importance of praying outside abortion centres. We've recently seen a big abortion centre in central London close after 11 years of prayer. So we know that they don't like us being there for a reason, and one of the reasons is we reach hundreds of women and offer support, and the other reason is that prayer and witness closes abortion centres.
Amazing, and it's a double-edged sword, and it's reassuring to know that they're trying to get rid of us in some ways, but also obviously disheartening at the same time. Great. Camila, so a question we've got for you is, if a woman doesn't want her baby, why doesn't she put it up for adoption?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but I think one of the main reasons is just that it's not discussed as an option. So most women who are in a crisis pregnancy situation normally just assume that abortion would be the easy way out, because that's what's touted by society. And so when they call, let's say for example, they call an abortion provider thinking, they'll have their options discussed with them. Normally adoption doesn't come up. We hear from many of the women who call us that they're not given any alternative. It's not discussed with them. They don't get the counselling they really need to be able to think through such a decision, and so they end up choosing abortion. And oftentimes we get women call us who actually deeply regret that decision. So yeah, adoption is fantastic, it just isn't talked about enough.
Okay, great, thank you. And Ruth, a question for you. Someone said they've got a friend who he says he's pro-life, but thinks it's unrealistic to think the law will ever change on abortion, and is suggesting that maybe we campaign to make abortions as safe as possible for women, ensure they're informed properly, and how should they respond to this?
I mean, I'd question whether he's actually pro-life, because there's no safe abortion. In a successful abortion procedure, the baby dies. So it's never ever safe for the child, and we know with the DIY abortions that are happening at the moment, where the pills are being sent to the home, they're even more dangerous for the mothers. But in terms of the crux of the question, should we just make them safe, and focus on making them safe? It's just as long as something's legal and readily available, more people are going to do it. And there's this lie that the numbers were exaggerated when they talked about the backstreet abortions. Thousands of women were dying. It's been proven that all those numbers were exaggerated. And so as soon as abortion became legal and readily available, more women do it, and more it's offered by doctors, the people we're meant to trust, who care for our health and our medical. So, and as I think most of the pro-life organisations would agree, that actually we want to see abortion both illegal and unthinkable. And us as an organisation, we know that, we believe we're not going to see it illegal until we change public opinion. So in the making it unthinkable, then we'd hope that people actually are not going to want a society changes and public opinion changes. People are not going to go to that as the solution to their problem, but they'll go to places like crisis pregnancy, good counsel network, for help and support in, whether it's adoption, whether it's support in raising their child. And that abortion, when it's seen for all that it is, it's just, killing a child, is no longer deemed a good solution to these real problems.
Sorry, can I just add in there, though, as you said, it's about making it unthinkable. If we replace unborn child with any other people group, it is unthinkable. So if someone says, racism is always going to exist, so maybe we should allow killing black people, or rape's always going to happen, let's just allow it to happen. That is unthinkable. So it's because it's the unborn child, exactly as Ruth's saying, that so anyone who ever says, it's unrealistic to ever change the law, therefore we should make it safe, doesn't believe, as Ruth really said, just doesn't believe the unborn child really is a people group.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it comes down to actually the heart of the abortion issue. And interesting what you're saying about the safety is, and drawing on that analogy, as I've heard one of like a burglary, you wouldn't say, if a burglar injures themselves or dies doing that, let's just make burglary legal and safe, and then that'll be fine. So that actually leads nicely into our next question is, quite generic. It's why are you against abortion, and what's the best way to respond to that question? If someone asks you that, how do we go about changing that public opinion? Who wants to?
Yeah. Show the reality. Abortion in the word itself. I had a conversation with someone earlier, and it said, saying about, having an abortion is wrong. To the world, that just sounds like, you're calling a medical procedure wrong? What about having your appendix out? But that's because the word abortion in and of itself is a euphemism. When we strip that away and see what does abortion do, it kills a child. So when we say, it's wrong to kill a child, all of a sudden it's like, well, actually that's a statement that most people would agree with. And the problem is that child has been so dehumanized, out of sight, out of mind, that we as pro-lifers, or those who are anti-abortion, want to see an end to abortion, we need to show the humanity of that child, and we need to show the reality of abortion. So, without even saying something's right or wrong, if we show an image of what that child looks like at 6, 7, 8, 24 weeks, most even little children will say baby. And then if we show an image of, the horrific reality of what abortion does to that child, it rips it apart piece by piece, sucks it out, decapitates its members. When people see the reality of this, all of a sudden it's like, actually, that's not a healthcare procedure. That's a violent act that is killing a little human being. And just by showing an image, I don't even need to use words. So that's how we are seeing many, many opinions change. We're seeing people change their mind, or at least they've got now a visual representative of what abortion really is. And so I think the more we can get the reality out, the more we can change the language and change the narrative to the truth, we're going to see public opinion change. And that's happened throughout history. In every injustice, happens out of sight, out of mind. The people group are dehumanized. Let's talk about, the Holocaust. The Jews were called parasites. They shaved their heads, gave them numbers, put them in pajamas, all this dehumanizing language and things they were doing to them because they were deemed somewhat subhuman. And we're doing the same to the unborn child. So we need to humanize, bring back their humanity, and show the reality of abortion. And we're going to see public opinion change.
Can I just add to that, Ruth? I think that's a really great point. I think also what we need to remember is that it's dehumanizing for the woman as well. To have an abortion procedure, it's the most unnatural thing that a woman can do. Carrying a child, being pregnant, it's natural for women. It's God-given, it's amazing, it's beautiful. And it's completely against human nature to kill your own child. I think that also needs to be addressed. What are women doing to themselves in that process, as well as what are they doing to their child?
I think similar to that, so the next question we've got is someone saying they don't understand how so many women get abortions when there's so much information on life in the womb. So you were saying about, we need to try and rehumanize, as it were, the womb. How can we, what would you say to people in these situations?
I can answer that one a little bit. I think something I've really noticed over the last 20 years is that many women have seen scans of babies in the womb, but if you go for an NHS scan, your first scan is at 12 weeks. But actually, there's really good information available about the developing baby from 5, 6, 7 weeks. You can see the humanity of the baby clearly. The baby is already beginning to move in the womb. It's tiny, but there's a lot there. And, we're actually accessing more of that information through women who have had abortion pills, posting videos of the remains of their baby, and this kind of traumatizing detail on YouTube and other social media sites. But very few women previously would have seen scans of their baby at that stage. So we can assume that people know the early development, but I think a lot of people don't know the early development until they've been through a pregnancy, maybe followed one of these trackers where they're following their baby through the pregnancy. And I think we need to get a lot more information out there about the baby in the womb in the early weeks of the pregnancy.
I think there's another thing as well. Paul writes in Romans 1 that we suppress the truth in our unrighteousness. And the fact is I think we need to realize that in our own sin, that we love self-deceit and that we love lying to ourselves, and that when we deep down know the truth, but we want to suppress that because of our idolatry and because of our pursuit and disobedience away from God. I think we do need to realize that at heart, the heart issue behind this, that when people whose eyes and hearts haven't been opened to see and understand that reality, then they're going to try and suppress that truth always. And that doesn't mean that only Christians can be pro-life, but as in it is saying that we do need to take into account the sin aspect behind a lot of this.
Great. And changing tact a little bit, someone wants to know why the abortion reversal pill has been banned in this country, or if it has, and if we can put clarity on that.
I'd say that we've been helping women to obtain abortion reversals for years now, and they haven't actually been banned, but the 2 doctors who were providing this service recently, who were providing it free of charge and on a voluntary basis and bending over backwards to help women in all circumstances, have been reported by Mary Stopes and, actually attacked by them to try and stop them providing the pill. And the General Medical Council have stopped those 2 doctors from providing it, but it is actually still something that a doctor can choose to prescribe or not. It's not very widely available on the NHS, but long before those 2 doctors got involved, we were helping women obtain it, because there are many doctors in the UK who already use it for other procedures, who would give it. The only difference this ruling has made is that poorer women are going to struggle to get it. Wealthy women who look for this pill will still be able to find it. So, we're still offering to help women find doctors. It's obviously at the doctor's discretion whether he or she will prescribe it. But the pill itself has not been banned, and there's a lot of evidence coming out of America that it may improve the chances of carrying a pregnancy after a woman has taken the first abortion pill by maybe 30% or more. So, I think women have the right to know it's out there and to be able to obtain it. If one group of women can obtain it, it shouldn't be banned to women who are poorer and just can't find the private doctor with that fee.
So one of the doctors, Dr. Dermot Kearney, we've been supporting him legally as they've been really going after him and the other doctor as well, and they have a fitness to practice hearing because of this. I just really want to specify, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about this, because there's people say, prescribing this drug is off-label. So basically, it's a drug that has been released for a particular purpose.
Could you explain a bit more about what the abortion reversal pill is, maybe first?
Progesterone is so the first abortion pill. My understanding, not a doctor.
Sorry to put you on the spot with that. I just think people might need more.
Yeah. So the first abortion pill basically stops the hormones that women need to protect the baby. So it cuts off basically that life support to the baby. What the abortion reversal pill does is it brings that hormone back up. So it undoes what the first pill does, and it's used for, as I said, for other, as Claire said, for other purposes as well. And it's not wrong to prescribe off-label drugs for other things if a doctor feels that it would work for this particular thing. So what the abortion lobby often say, they frame it as, they're doing experimental treatment with these drugs that aren't done for this, but that's a common practice. In a sense, the abortion pills are off-label. And so we really need to just clarify and clear that up. And they checked beforehand with the General Medical Council, the relevant authorities beforehand, is this okay to do? And they said, we don't support you doing this, but you can do it. And then, as it said, the Marie Stopes, the pro-abortion lobby, who are the ones that are campaigning on this. And yes, so the general advice is, if you take the first pill and you don't want it, you should just wait and see. And they say the chances of survival is about 25%. And with Dr. Dermot Kearney's, this is anecdotal, he's seen about 50%. Hugely encouraging, but it's heartbreaking. I mean, this is like real hero work. We often talk about the early church rescuing the babies that have been thrown out of the city and are left to die. This is the kind of work they're doing, and it really shows how evil and in a sense spiritual this battle is. That the fact that these doctors who are saving lives are being banned from saving lives.
I just see total hypocrisy in it though as well, and that they say they're pro-choice, and it's like, okay, so now a woman wants to change her mind, she wants to make a different choice, she's choosing to take a different pill, but actually that's not the choice we want her to make, so we're going to do whatever we can to prevent that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they're terrified that they want the job finished, because I think we collaborated. There was a young lady going back a few years who'd taken the first pill, and she came back when we were outside the clinic, and she changed her mind. She didn't want this abortion anymore. She saw, and I believe we drove her up to the Good Counsel Network. She got a scan, and praise God, the baby was fine. So she'd taken the first pill, but I remember the clinic kept ringing her up. It was Mary Stopes. They kept saying, no, you have to come back. You have to come back for the second. Your baby's going to be deformed. And I think they're terrified that, I don't know what they're terrified, well, I don't know what they're terrified of.
There seems to be two concerns. One is if the baby was born with anything wrong with it, they might be held responsible. There's not much evidence of that. In fact, the American Abortion Pill Reversal Network has been keeping tabs on the number of women who've had the reversal treatment, and there is no incidence of birth defects that's higher in these women than in normal population of women. So that's one thing. And I think also the idea that it becomes widely known that many women are changing their mind after taking the first pill is not something that suits abortion providers. I can say that since these two doctors have been banned from giving the pill, we've had knowledge of 15 women who were seeking the reversal, who, to my best of my knowledge, have not managed to obtain it. So, they're mostly sitting at home praying that they won't lose their babies.
Gosh, that's really difficult.
One particular one that we both worked with, her baby was fine, without taking any reversal. So.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, well, hopefully that'll be the case for all of those women as well, but we shall see. Camila, maybe you might be able to help us with this one. So someone said that I know someone who had an abortion because they were told their child was incompatible with life. Do you have any idea how we could respond to that?
I think that really boils down to, what is human life? What is the value of human life? I think society really has kind of made it seem like your value lies in your usefulness, which is a very utilitarian way of looking at things. And actually, funnily enough, that is actually what the Nazis believed. This is why disabled people were killed during the Holocaust, because they were deemed life unworthy of life. And Hitler wrote this in his book. That these people were somehow it just was too much of a burden on society. And actually we're doing the same thing now. I think it's 9 out of 10 babies who are diagnosed with Down syndrome are actually aborted in the womb. Down syndrome is not a life-threatening condition a lot of the time. And anyone who knows someone with Down syndrome will know how much joy they bring to your life. So I think it's about reframing what does the value of human life actually mean, because society, I think, has definitely got it wrong on that one.
Yeah, we had Heidi Crowter shared a message with us yesterday because she's campaigning, taking the government to court, which I think is amazing, about the discrimination there in the law, which I think is, so cool. And her message was, as always, really, really lovely to hear. So I guess in a similar way, so talking about specific aspects of the law, so talked about discrimination. Someone is asking if sex-selective abortion is legal in the UK. So, abortion in the case of the child being female, usually, or male. Does anyone want to tackle that one?
So there's two ways to think about it. So technically it's not given as a reason. So technically abortions are legal in the UK, except for particular reasons. So I would argue most abortions in the UK are illegal because there's no evidence to justify them. Well, there's never evidence to justify them, but according to the law, they're not justified. So technically on the sex of the baby is not a reason, although some would say it can cause cause distress to the mental health of the mother. And so in that sense, it is allowed. It's worth putting this maybe in a bit of historical context that in 2014, 2015, Parliament voted against explicitly banning sex-selective abortions. So
these so-called feminist MPs all voted against it.
Yeah. So, and that's something I often bring up when people talk about, if they don't like this policy that this MP does. And I'm like, well, but you support this MP who explicitly voted against banning sex-selective abortions. I can't comprehend it at all. And it's worth noting as well that the pro-abortion lobbyists who promote full decriminalisation up to birth explicitly say, and that would include sex-selective abortions. They, Anne Ferretti, former CEO of BPAS, she wrote an article around that time when sex-selective abortions were being debated and voted on in Parliament. She said, you can't be pro-choice if you don't like the choice, which basically says for any reason whatsoever, including the sex of the baby, an abortion's an abortion. And it makes sense. That's the logical conclusion of the pro-abortion position. If it's a clump of cells, then why should it matter? And I often say that to my pro-abortion friends or whoever I'm trying to just talk with. I'm saying, what do you think about sex-selective abortion? And normally they'll say, oh, no, not that. And I'll say, why? It's a clump of cells. And, I think that's sometimes can be a helpful way to speak into that and expose what the pro-abortion lobbyists are doing, because they are extreme.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it just blows my mind. I just really thought that when that bill was going through Parliament, I felt like that was such an easy win. I couldn't get over the fact that people still managed to find something wrong with it. So I've heard someone's asking, they said they've heard pro-lifers say they want to end pills by post-abortion, but any abortion is wrong, isn't it? So why are we picking out a particular type? And do we think this is sending the wrong message?
I think there's a lot to be said about this. You've got to recognise what's going on with pills by post-abortion. It's a way for abortion clinics, inverted commas, to see many, many, many more women, because they don't actually have to see them at all. It can all be done by phone. They're shipping these pills out to anyone who rings and asks. They don't know if it's going to the woman who's on the phone. They don't know if she's genuinely pregnant or if she's ringing for someone else, or they don't know if somebody's forcing someone to take the pills. They don't know if the woman's in an abusive relationship. They have no clue really what they're sending those pills out into. I've spoken to numerous women since this started. I mean, at the beginning of lockdown last year, in fact, throughout the first lockdown, all we did was get help for women to get the reversal pill after getting these pills. And numerous women were saying, I've got the pills sitting in my drawer, I don't know what to do, I don't want to take them. You have one bad day and someone putting pressure on you who's living with you and right in your face, especially in lockdown when there was no escape. I think a lot of these women are in really vulnerable situations. All abortions are wrong, and every abortion is just as wrong as a pill abortion. But the aim of pill abortion is to vastly expand, at the lowest possible cost to the clinic, abortions, and it's hitting the most vulnerable women. They have less time to think about it. Pro-lifers can't reach them with alternative help. So in many ways, this is a really, really, devastating thing which can vastly increase the numbers of abortions. So that's one reason why we're particularly worried about it. But I think we also have to recognise, I guess some of the more positive news is all these pills are sent out, but actually now we have no idea what the abortion statistics are, because how do we know whether the women have taken them or not? I've certainly spoken to dozens of women who have not taken the pills that are sitting in their drawer. So that's the one positive, I guess.
If I can add to that, I think it's important, yes, we campaign against abortion generally, but we have to also, what are the battles at the time? And as an organisation, CBR UK, we've studied the history of social reform. And one of the ones I particularly did a lot of study, because I did it at school, is Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And just reading his book, what struck me was that he said, we didn't win any battles when we went to, I'm not even going to say the state because I can't remember where it was, because he said we just campaigned generally against racism, and we didn't win any battles. But when they had specific campaigns, so it was to desegregate the bus boycott, or whether it was the lunch counter sit-ins, they won, they won victories in these different areas. And so I think, as much as, yes, we want to educate on abortion, what it is, who the child is, we also need to see what is happening at this moment in time. And particularly the hypocrisy of the pills by post is that you've got Matt Hancock, the health secretary, telling us to stay at home, telling us to protect the NHS and telling us to save lives, when he's, behind closed doors, first of all, we're not going to change the abortion law, and then doing exactly that and allowing these abortion pills to just be sent, which is increasing the risk of life, increasing the pressure on the NHS because of all these women who are getting harmed by these pills. And so I think it's the hypocrisy, and we need to highlight this. We saw a lot of we took out we called it Hancock's Healthcare campaign. We saw a lot of people that they weren't even necessarily against abortion full stop, but they were like, no, that's wrong. So even if we can win people in certain areas, yes, of course, we need to fully let them see this as a human being. But for some people, it takes stages. Oh, yeah, it's wrong to send these pills. It hurts the woman. Oh, gosh, it's the child's going down the toilet and into the sewers. And then it's just another few steps before they see, hold on, actually, this is a human. So I think there is a level of incrementalism that we need to expect rather than just hold out and just general abortion. I think it's not either or, it's both.
And realizing that the pro-abortion incrementalism as well. The fact is that this was a policy that they've been campaigning for a few years. But the reality, COVID's a good opportunity to now use it as an excuse. And so being able to respond to that, we launched a judicial review to challenge that. We're currently awaiting appeal to the Supreme Court to challenge the government's position. And we've formed a coalition, CBR, all of us are in the Care for Women coalition, really particularly campaigning on that. I think Clare gave a really good summary of the real safeguarding and the protections for women that are just lost through all of this. One of the things that came up in court with our judicial review was the evidence of the way that the pro-abortion lobby really have access to the highest levels of the Department for Health and Social Care, which has been really good to expose, but discouraging at the same time, the way that there was that double U-turn. And really trying to expose the way that the pro-abortion lobby are speaking and influencing government at the highest levels. It was good that was exposed.
Hey Mark, how are you doing? Thanks for No, it was great to have you with us. We're currently talking about the abortion sort of pills by post at the moment. But maybe you could just take a moment just to introduce yourself and talk about the work that you do at Life.
So my name is Mark Bhagwandan. I'm advocacy manager for the Life charity. So I've been involved with that for the last 16, 17 years. So I've been around the pro-life movement for quite a bit.
No, that's fantastic. And I was going to ask Camila, and I think you could come in on this as well. Have you guys noticed a change in the calls perhaps that you're getting since pills by post has come in over the past couple of years?
Yeah, definitely had more calls from women who regret their decision, basically. I think it's partly because they're not going in for consultation at one of these clinics. So they're not being seen, they're not really being spoken to. It's very much a rushed process. And we've got women who've called us after having an abortion. They say things like they feel like they were on a conveyor belt, basically. It's just a very rushed process. It's not really explained to them the risks of having an abortion on their mental, physical health. It's not discussed. And so because they have no time to really think through this decision, they take it, believe it's just a quick medical process, and then end up having deep regret, which is absolutely tragic. Those are the most difficult calls that we get.
Have you noticed something similar at Life?
Yes, I think a lot of women are confused when they suddenly realize that they're pregnant, and so they do call us up, and very often the pill seems to be a quick fix, and they find out that it isn't really. And so we get people who've actually taken the pill to call us up afterwards, and some who call us before they do that, and they think, I think I should take it, because they really want that problem that they're faced with to go away. And then if you understand that as a counsellor, that they are in crisis, that it is unexpected, then you can talk through with them the options that are there, aside from taking the pills. Is it support? What are you afraid of? What are your fears? And then see how can we help you? How can we empower you to continue with that pregnancy? And I think if those conversations are there, and that the charities are there to be able to provide that key consultation, and that's really, really crucial. So yes, we have been seeing quite a lot of calls coming in over the last year. In fact, quite a significant increase in calls.
And I've got a comment for you actually, Mark, that I thought maybe you could respond to. So they said when someone has a miscarriage, it's always reported that they've lost their baby, but when it's abortion, we talk about fetus, and they see this as a sort of double standard. Do you have any idea what we could respond?
Yes, I mean, I think personal stories are really important in these. And I have my own personal story. We had a miscarriage. My wife at 6 months. And I remember standing up in an audience where doctors were saying, oh, it's a fetus, and so on. And I said, well, you are a doctor. You know what a baby looks like at 6 months, but you're not acknowledging that it is a baby. But I'm not going to stand here and say that my baby that died at 6 months was a fetus. That was a baby. I held her. I looked at her. I saw her arms and her legs, and I can still remember her face. I gave her a proper funeral. And I think and there was a stunned silence, because it is these stories that brings to life what it is that we're really talking about. This is not an abstract concept. This is a baby who is here. I've held my baby in my arms, and there you are saying, it's a fetus. It's not a baby. It doesn't have any rights. And I think it's when we bring those stories forward and to say to people, this is what we are talking about. People get it. And the more of those stories that we can bring out, the better it is for the pro-life cause.
Can I comment on that? As I've stumbled across a few kind of miscarriage pages on Facebook and on social media, and I find even they're trying to, humanize their child. They say, I lost a child, I had a child, I lost my child. But they find that society just doesn't know that a parent who has a miscarriage is grieving. And I think that is widely due to the abortion culture, because, there is that hypocrisy which we see on the media, we see on the BBC, as you say, like if it's, Princess Meghan is with child as a baby, the article will say baby. But if it's an abortion article, it will say fetus. And so I think everyone who's lost a child, whether it's through miscarriage or through abortion, we need to see that humanization of the child so that everyone can grieve healthily.
And moving the conversation sort of a bit wider to the work that you do, people have some questions for people working in the pro-life movement. So the first one is, what made you want to work for the pro-life movement in the first place? Or did we fall into it? There was no... was there much choice in the matter? I don't know.
For me, it was really, I think, going back to what Ruth has been talking about, seeing the humanity of the unborn child and understanding the reality of what abortion is and what it does. And that was through my previous work, funnily enough, at Christian Concern. I think because I worked with them, the abortion issue came up again and again, and so I couldn't escape from it. I had to face the fact that this was happening, 800 times every working day in this country. And I think when I was confronted with that reality, there was no way that I could just carry on living my life the way I lived it before. I had to do something about that. And so, thanks to God, I've been kind of put in these various organisations, and now I'm very privileged to be doing what I'm doing.
I think part of it is, or the reason why lots of people aren't in the pro-life movement is because I think there's a disconnect between what they theoretically say that they believe, that the unborn child is a human being. And if you genuinely believed that, we would do something about it. Because 200,000 babies are killed every year. And if you genuinely believe that those babies are individual human beings whose lives are being taken, then you would be stirred to action. As we were saying earlier, if we replaced them with any single people go 200,000 murdered every year, and it's state-sponsored, we would be doing something about it. And I think that there was a time when it all clicked.
How did it click for you, Clare? Was it something similar, or?
I think growing up in a pro-life family, recognising the injustice of abortion, Pope John Paul II saying preach the gospel of life from the rooftops definitely had a big impact on me, and I know so many other people who came into the pro-life movement after that speech he gave at World Youth Day in Denver in 1993, that was. And I think also just the shock of realising that, you know, the churches are the ones that are holding this belief, but so little activity was going on to support the unborn and defend the unborn. That's what really brought me into the movement.
Great. Mark, how about you? How did you end up working for, because you've worked for quite a long time now for Life?
Yes.
What brought you?
Before that, I was a journalist in Guyana, and in 1995, Guyana legalized abortions for the first time. And they did it because they said there was so much backstreet abortions happening, and they needed to regulate it. So I've heard that argument quite a lot. Thing is, it came right home to me when we had the issue with Gabriella, our baby that had died, first child. And I remember as a journalist, because I never thought about it before that, and here it was hitting me. So my wife was hemorrhaging throughout the pregnancy, and doctors were saying, well, have an abortion, because it's just become legal. Have an abortion, and you don't have to go through all of this. And I remember seeing the scans of her moving about, because we fought really, really hard to keep her. And I saw the scans, and you saw her arms and legs kicking and so on. And we could not bring ourselves to end that pregnancy. And so we tried our hardest, and then at 6 months she died naturally. And then I came to the United Kingdom in 2002, and I saw that abortion was actually being allowed much later on at 6 months. And immediately I thought of Gabriella, and I thought she could have been aborted, terminated, not die naturally in this country. And I knew what 6 months looked like, and I thought that's just quite shocking that you would have that in this country. And so I after I finished my journalism, my master's in journalism at City, I saw this job at Life for somebody who would do PR and so on, and so I joined. And that's why I came into the pro-life movement, but I had a personal reason why I wanted to do this. And I think that has helped me throughout the years to stay focused, stay motivated, in spite of everything that's happening. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. And Ruth, what made you want to work for the pro-life movement?
I think the first time my heart, I guess, was really broken for the issue, it was very much linked in with the church doing nothing. It was, so it was hand in hand with just the apathy of not even the Catholic Church, the non-Catholic Church that I was a part of. And I was reading, funnily enough, I was reading William Wilberforce at the time, and about his life, and he'd written down his life goals, which one of them was to see the end to the transatlantic slave trade. And so, inspired by that, I wrote down my life goal in a book, and I left it in a book. And then I saw that Christian Concern were doing something called the Wilberforce Academy, and I was like, wow, the church talking about abortion, I need to be there. And so I went along, and that's when I, like others of us, saw abortion for the first time. I saw a video of an abortion procedure. I saw that little baby being ripped apart, at 6 months, sucked out limb by limb. And the same as Camila, seeing it, I could not just live my life, go home, live my life, knowing that is happening at such a massive scale. So it went from it being just words in a book to, I'm giving my life to this. And confident that as the tide turns, as more and more, particularly young people, we thank God for everyone who's gone before us. But even new generations coming up and standing up and speaking out, that we're going to see an end in our lifetime.
Yeah, it excites me as well, and there's something I've noticed, especially I think the March for Life is really good at showing that. As I remember when it was here in Birmingham, and there weren't anywhere near as many people as there are now, and every year there's always more and more marching with us and sharing and growing in the culture of life. So it's fantastic. Well, thank you so much everyone for joining us today. It's been really lovely to hear from all of you, and very inspiring, I think, to hear what all your organisations are up to. So thank you so much to Camila, to Ben, to Ruth, Mark and to Clare.